Hi, it's Cayman with S&B, and today we're going to be installing our new 45-gallon fuel tank on this 2023 all-wheel drive Sprinter. So this tank fits all 144, 170-inch wheelbase 2023 and up vans. One thing to check, and you'll see on the installation instructions, is to look for the lateral crossmember behind the tank on the 170 crew vans. A lot of 170 crew vans are not built with the lateral crossmember, so that would not allow this tank to get bolted up because it won't allow us to get our rear strap attached. Another thing to check is just any interference in front and behind the tank, and we will show you what to look for when we get under the van and get this up on the lift. First step is going to make sure parking brake is set. Van's in park. Now we're going to pop the door open, pull open the filler door, and we are going to use a T30 to remove all these screws, as well as the cap. To get this door off, the trick is to close it like this and then just pull it together. So now we're going to put this in the seat, and we're going to grab the included zip tie, and what we're going to do here is that square, we're going to create a little loop. I'll show you what that looks like. So you can see we created the loop, and this is our rollover valve hose. So what we're going to do is we're going to feed this down, and we will grab this after we have the van in the air or after we're underneath the van. Fish it down, and we're going to take the end and we're going to put it through the loop, but we're going to make sure that the hose is behind this sheet metal bracket. If it's not, you're not going to be able to close the filler door. A little hard to see in there. Okay, so we got the hose. Now we're going to get the hose nice and secure with this zip tie. And we'll just cut off the extra and we'll put on the door. Now we're getting the cover back on. Again, it's a T30. And you can put the cap in, and we won't be using this again until we fill up the tank. So now that we have that hose going through the top down, we're going to peel away this styrofoam. Be careful not to break it. You don't necessarily need it, but never good to break anything. So you can see it was already, cut in the middle, so it can be removed. And we are going to reach up, find the hose, and just leave it like this for now. And then now we're going to go and we're going to remove the hose clamp off of the filler. And so there's a check valve built into this side. But there's always going to be some fuel left over in this part of the neck. So if you're good, you can crack it open so the fuel just dribbles out. I wasn't that good there, but just dribble it out into the bucket without making a mess. So I felt like the fuel just kept on coming, and there was a lot of fuel stuck in the neck. So we got this removed. Now we will begin removing the feed and the return. So there are these blue and white lines. My camera guy is gonna hop underneath the lift. Get some better lighting under here too. And there are these two lines right here. So pop that one out. And then this just gets disconnected right there. And then this is also new for the all-wheel drive van, is usually the white lines right here, but it's down here on the fuel filter. So release that clip. And that removes. Free it up from this line on the fuel filter. And the only thing left to do is up here is this electrical connector on the transfer case. So I just depress this button on the back and pull it off. And you can see here, here's the complete assembly. There's no need to cut any zip ties. This is your auxiliary fuel tap that was not connected. But if it was connected, you'll want to remove this quick connect as well. And now we're ready to go to fuel tank straps and get the tank dropped. So this is a stock tank on a 2023 Sprinter. And to see if the 45-gallon fuel tank will work for you, one, you need to check to make sure that there's nothing occupying this space in front of the tank. There's probably not going to be, since there's a fuel filter already here from the factory. Just make sure this is all free. And then now we're going to go to the back and check to see if there's anything mounted behind the tank and all the way up until here. So we need space. If you have electrical lines that are really close to the cab here, you'll be okay. But we need to make sure there's space all the way back here. And then anything mounted outside the tank, if it's working on the stock tank, it's gonna work on the S&B tank as well, because our tank does not extend any further out than the stock tank. And as always, you can send pictures to 909-675-1313 of in front, behind the fuel tank, and underneath or behind or wherever, and we can tell you if the tank's gonna work or not. Okay, now we're gonna take our 11mm socket and we're gonna remove the fuel tank straps. So you got a bolt up there and a bolt on the frame side for each strap, and there's 3 straps, so you got 6 bolts. This customer, for some reason, had the fuel tank dropped and they did not replace the tank with the factory hardware, so we're gonna use, I think it's a 15mm for this side, but it's 11mm all the way around if you have factory hardware. I should probably mention too, we have our jack underneath the tank supporting the tank. So if you're doing this on the ground, you could either have a buddy helping you hold the underside of the tank, or use some ratchet straps, or just put your body under it and do one strap at a time. And the spacers you see, if you can see that bolt, those are not OEM. That's something that this customer did aftermarket on spacing his tank down. Now that we got the fuel connectors, electrical, and the front disconnected, and all 3 straps undone, as well as the filler neck removed, we can begin lowering the OEM tank. Now we're going to be installing the plus nuts on this rear lateral cross member. So we're going to take the hardware pack that came with the S&B tank in the white box. We gave you 3 plus nuts in case you mess up one. We're going to take the longer bolt, put it through the machined S&B piece. This is what's going to activate the plus nut. We'll get the plus nut all the way in, and we'll install it. Then we're going to take the It's a 17 mil socket. That's going to fit around the black bolt, and a 7/8 inch open end wrench, or the close side. Press up to make sure it's going to be activated against the cross member. And this helps to have a buddy hold the wrench here. So you get someone to come over. You can stand on the other side of the drive line. And we'll crank down on this. And you'll know when you're stopped because you can't go anymore. And I will back this off. You'll see the plus nut got perfectly activated there. And then now we're also gonna put the plus nut in this hole. We won't show you how to do that. So here are what the two plus nuts look like fully installed. Now we're going to begin transferring over everything from the stock tank to the S&B tank. So the S&B tank reuses your existing cine unit, your vent line, your filler line. And before we put the filler line, we're going to put our check valve in. So to get started, there's a special tool. We can put this in the link to the video. If you don't have the special tool for the cine unit, you can just take a dead blow and a pry bar and just hit this counterclockwise. But we do so many of these, this tool really does come in handy. And again, just counterclockwise. We got that popped up. Remove it from all the clips. And I'll show you one thing here. You know, a question we get asked is, does your tank work with auxiliary fuel taps? So this little line here is the auxiliary fuel tap. And I'll get this pulled out and show you exactly how that works. And so when you're pulling this out, you're gonna wanna be careful because there's a snake-like venturi device that goes into the back of the tank. And that pulls fuel into the sending unit. But it does have that wire connected, so it makes it a little stiff and hard to get out. And to keep everything clean going on to the S&B tank, pour out as much fuel possible. And here's the auxiliary fuel tap, just so you know. You can see this little rod, and you can see where it ends up in the bucket. It doesn't touch, you know, the bottom of the bucket. So once the fuel gets down to that point, your auxiliary fuel tap is your auxiliary fuel pump is going to stop running. And so it's the same thing when you put into the tank, S&B tank. There's a lot more fuel to burn until you get to that point, but you're still going to have that shut-off mark. And so now we're going to get everything transferred over into the S&B tank. We'll take the included S&B O-ring. We'll put it into the S&B O-ring groove, and we'll be putting this into the tank. And one thing to make sure of, and we'll pop this open to check, is to make sure this doesn't get caught in front of the float and keeps the float from moving up. So we'll show you how to check that, but get it over the baffle, drop it into the tank. The arrow is going to face the tab. Put down pressure on the tank to get the ring started. And now we're gonna tighten the ring clockwise to get it locked in. And to make sure it got locked in and checked, just make sure that this bump on the ring went under the indentation on the S&B tank. So now we're going to get our Allen key set and pop this open to make sure the float's free. Vent removed so we can inspect to make sure that the float is not stuck. So now that we got this open, with a flashlight or your camera flashlight, look in here to make sure that the float is free. Now that we have the vent popped off, you can see that the venturi line is on the left, the float is on the right, and is completely free. So it's not going to have any interference in the upward or downward travel of the float, and your gauge is going to be working accurately. Now you can reinstall the vent. Remember, it's pointing this way, right towards that line. And do this by hand so you don't break off any of these bolts. Now we're going to pop over the vent. So the OEM one just wiggles off. You can get it under the S&B rollover line. And we have clips for these. Now we're going to get off the filler. So if you could remember, and if you're watching this before you do the install, to remove this hose clamp as well before you get out the tank. It'll make it a lot easier because now I have the hose clamp facing towards the ground, and it makes it a little bit harder to get off. But we can still get it done. So now that we have the hose clamp off, before we put it onto the S&B tank, we're going to take the included S&B check valve and we're going to push it into the side that came off of the tank. So obviously you want the check valve to be open towards the tank. So push it in that way and we'll get it started, and we'll use the tank filler to push it on the rest. Actually, before we get this on, we'll get this spun the other way, and we will get snug, won't completely tighten it in case you do need to remove it when the tank is in. So now that we have the filler hose on with the check valve inside, we have all of our fuel lines and electrical lines snapped into the bracket. We can put the tank up onto the jack and get it into place. Now that we have the tank on the jack, everything's buttoned up on top, we're ready to get this tank up and reconnect the feed return as well as the filler. So the hose that we fished down from the top on the first step, we have this right here, and this is the hose that was attached to the tank. We're going to pull it tight to make sure it doesn't get caught underneath this frame and pinched. But we're going to get this hose pushed in to this T. Make sure that's all the way on and held in here. And as we get the tank all the way up, I'm just going to be holding this line here to make sure it doesn't get caught or pinched. And this line here just goes right into that hole. Now with the smallest SMB strap, we're going to get this started in the back. The strap side with the little notches cut out go on the frame side, square go on the inside driveline side. And we use the included SMB gold bolts. And this is a 15 mil socket. We'll get that started a little bit, then we'll get the other side started and get them both fastened in. Now we're going to be starting from the rear, working our way forward. So we're going to take the smallest SMB strap, get it on the rear, and we're going to push up. And we are using the gold bolts that were included with the SMB kit. We're going to get that started by hand a little bit there. And work our way over to the driveline side. We want to make sure that the strap goes underneath all these lines. Now we're actually going to move all the way to the front strap on the tank. We'll move our jack over to put some pressure. Then we'll take the widest SMB strap and the longest side goes on the driveline side. Make sure we're not going to pinch any of our electrical. Find the threads up there. We're going to get this bolt nice and snug. And as well. Now we got the two middle straps and we'll have all the straps on. Now we're going to do the two middle straps. These two straps are identical. Again, longer side goes on the driveline side. So when you see this strap, you'll see that this customer already had this spacer in here. And he had that because he had these bolts coming down, which were touching the stock tank. So his installer installed these spacers. These are not necessary if you don't have anything mounted below the frame like this. Even if there is something mounted, if it's not touching the stock tank, it's not going to touch the SMB tank. Now we're going to be reconnecting the electrical return as well as the feed. This blue line back here. We'll get it snapped in and make sure to put the safety on as well. And after you get it snapped in and you put the safety on, it's always best to gently pull to see if you can get the connector to release. Because sometimes you feel like I thought I got it connected there and it wasn't actually connected. So you always want to test to make sure it is connected. So pull away after you get it on. Okay, I heard it click. Put the safety on. Now I'm trying to pull the connector off after the safety's on, and that connector's good to go. Heard a snap. Safety on. Give it a nice little pull, and that one's good to go. And this electrical, there's the clip. Give that one a pull as well, and we were good to go there. Now we are going to move to the filler. So first what we're going to do is we're going to put our guard back on. So get that going. What we're going to have to do here, since we have this 5/16 hose, we're going to have to make a little cut into the guard so we can get that 5/16 hose through. So we're going to make this cut right here on the top. This pressed up. That's what it's gonna look like after. Now we're gonna get the filler reconnected. Remember, I left this loose. And the reason is if you ever see a leak out here because the hose clamp was installed too loose, you can always tighten it up and you don't have it facing up. That's nice and tight. Now we'll get the filler side nice and tight as well. Okay, now the install is complete. Always good to check for clearance and check all your connections, all your bolts, hose clamps, the fuel connectors. But this is what the S&B tank looks like. Again, this is on an all-wheel drive. So it has a new fuel filter here. Tank works its way back and it goes all the way on a 144, almost all the way to the rear axle. And then we add this rear strap back here and just bolt it up to plus nuts. But let us know if you have any questions. 909-675-1313. Thank you for watching.